Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? Yesterday I made a video which was entitled A Non-Prophetic Forecast in response to queries from people about what I or we or Mr. Miller, but queries that I receive, think is going to happen next. What's going on? What can we expect? What's the forecast? And in that video I described how within 4 or 5 months we're really going to be living in a different world, so to speak. The likelihood is quite great because there is so much going on. And I neglected to mention land expropriation without compensation, and I'm not going to get into it now, but I mention it because that's another factor which, if implemented, as it may well be by early next year, is going to change everything. What I really want to talk to you about now, though, is a Business Tech article that appeared 5 months ago in June, which is very instructive now. It's entitled ANC to use coronavirus pandemic to push other changes in South Africa. Economists. So economists are saying this. It's by a staff writer, no name, and here it runs. While current government attention is focused on mitigating the immediate fallout from the COVID-19 crisis, last week provided some insight into the ANC's thinking around the reconstruction of the economy post the crisis, says the Bureau of Economic Research. It said that the governing party foresees an increased role for the state in driving the recovery, which will include pushing ahead with a state bank and a government-owned pharmaceutical company. For those of you who are interested, the word that is used to describe this, besides the fact that it is a typically socialist move, is dirigisme. Dirigisme. It's a French word that's commonly used in English. It is the word. Not to get all fancy speaking French, it is the word for this phenomenon. Dirigisme. That's the idea where the state becomes more and more and more and more dominant and eventually directs everything, controls everything, is the oversight authority in every sphere of endeavor in a society, in a state, whether it be health or education or insurance or sport, economics, finance, banking, and so on. Delicious water. COVID-19 could also provide new impetus for implementing national health insurance. A key pillar of the post-COVID rebuilding seems to be an accelerated rollout of infrastructure investment, the Bureau for Economic Research said. In line with this, President Ramaphosa said on Sunday, the 31st of May, that while the current 500 billion fiscal support package was crafted to deal with the current crisis, more is needed, more money. We have heard the infrastructure drum being banged before. What may be different now is that given precarious public finances, the ANC seems to realize that this program, valued at 350 billion, that's presumably we're still on the subject of national health insurance, will need to be financed by increased loans from developmental finance institutions, DFIs, and the private sector. Okay, so we're talking about infrastructure. Accelerated rollout of infrastructure investment, excuse me. This possibility was again raised to amend legislation in order to nudge private and public pension funds into financing these projects, possibly through some form of a prescribed assets regime. Furthermore, some reports suggested that a draft internal ANC document suggested that the South African Reserve Bank should directly fund DFIs, developmental finance institutions, in order to ensure greater access to infrastructure-related loans. The BER noted that this would not be in line with the central bank's constitutionally enshrined mandate. So presumably we're going to have to change the constitution again to achieve that. Again, as in we are apparently in the process of amending Section 25 of the Constitution to permit expropriation of property without compensation. We would have to do it again to permit this. That is to say, the South African Reserve Bank directly funding developmental finance institutions. Globally, an increased role for the state may be one of the legacies of the health crisis. Never mind global. In our view, if the South African state were to play a more active role in facilitating increased private sector fixed investment, including but not limited to the green energy space, this would be most welcome, it said. You can't believe that these fools can think like this. In other words, what's going on here is that they're saying that it seems as if the ANC is pushing, the ANC as a party, as a policy institution, as a partner, let us say, a political horse ridden by a policy rider in the form of the South African Communist Party. That's how you can think of the relationship between the ANC and the SACP. That the ANC, driven by the SACP as a policy brains trust, is driving the government, which is also the ANC, but we must make a distinction, to engage in obtaining more money, because they run out of money, from private institutions for the purposes of infrastructural development, the National Health Initiative that we alluded to earlier, and what were the first two things? The State Bank and the government pharmaceutical company. This is very worrying, not least because it encompasses a number of salient initiatives. If it was one thing, let's say a state bank, then we might say, well, who knows, they might not pull it off, let's wait and see, time will tell, we don't have a crystal ball, etc., etc. But when it encompasses so many salient, separate initiatives, a state bank, the National Health Insurance Initiative, all sorts of infrastructural development, the founding of a state pharmaceutical company, and so on, then you must begin to wonder, or you must begin to believe, that along with expropriation without compensation, the government is liable to get at least 2 or 3 of these initiatives right. And they intend to do so with principally prescribed assets, namely assets dictated by law, assets belonging to pension funds, dictated by law to be devoted to government initiatives. Now, some of you will have read, that in the past week, that is to say the first week of November 2020, it was revealed that the government is in talks with the pension funds So they're going ahead with this thing come hell or high water. They're hell bent on it. And you and I both know that they will muck it up. They will muck it up not because we're negative people, not because we're cynical, not because we're skeptics, not because we're pessimists, not because we're jaded, but because they muck up everything they touch. It will end in disaster, guaranteed. And this is a cause for great concern. I read recently that the gross value of South Africa's pension funds is 11.5 trillion rand, or 10.5 trillion rand, thereabouts. Let's call it 11. But I read previously a more detailed and therefore apparently more credible, more accurate figure of 13 trillion rand. And I saw an interview with Davy Ruet from a couple of days ago, the day, I think the night of, or the morning following the medium-term budget policy statement address of a week and a bit ago, in which Davy Ruet said that there was R1 trillion available, like really available, in private coffers to be deployed to government infrastructure programs. So whatever the amount it ends up being, we can most surely kiss R1 trillion or more goodbye. Guys, you know, we'd like to avoid melodrama. We'd like to avoid histrionics. But we must tell you that if you're not perturbed by this, you should be. If you're not perturbed by all of these things going on in the country right now, and all of what is planned to occur in the near future, you're wrong. This stuff must worry any right-thinking person sick. It's very troubling. Anyway, I'll leave you with that thought. We will no doubt elaborate upon it, expand upon it in due course. We don't have to rush it all right now. Let it suffice to say for now, think about how to prepare and to position yourself for darker times than those in which we now find ourselves. And may our Lord, our God, our own God, as I like to say, our God and nobody else's, may He be with you. Thank you, and bye-bye.